or Forum, the World Bank, Pierre Green, the Global Environment Facility, Salesforce, the G20 Global Land Initiative, the Crop Trust, and Breakthrough Strategies and Solutions. So now, we are going to do something a little bit different. Are you guys ready for something different? We've invited one of our favorite Nairobi-based artists who is going to inspire us all with a spoken word performance. Everyone, please give a very warm welcome to Gray Olesa. And by the way, I promised you a surprise today, but I'll tell you later. Hope you can catch it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Can you hear me? Can I get a hi? It's so good to see everyone this morning. How are you guys doing? You're good? Okay. There's this quote by Adrienne Rich, who's a poet that, yeah, if I get to her level, then I made it. She says that there must be those among whom we can sit down and weep and still be counted as warriors. And while this is a conference, and if we start weeping right now, it might be a bit awkward for all of us. I think we have a couple moments just to breathe, you know. The times before performances, and the times before, you know, being asked these big questions about new visions, those are the most important times to take a breath. With a new vision for Earth, we stand proud with an armful of commitments to carry past city's great threshold. Aching with the waves of sensation, we all carry within us a room full of promises to be kept and intentions to be honored. This new vision is an invitation to asking new questions that pave the way to inclusive solutions. Questions like, if the future is female, what is the present? Questions like, why must we choose between justice and peace? Questions like, why must we offer ourselves as a sacrifice to secure survival? This new vision is a fresh sprout in conversation with its ancient roots. It is the resilience of a mind thriving by shedding reverence for colonial gods, degrowth as the latest faith. Show me where the tears of grief flow freely and mingle with the tears of joy wrung from laughter, forming a river in the forest where we wrestle with the memories that have held captive our imaginations, and get into bed with the memories that inform our visions and these very dreams. As we watch a new world come alive from the soil, from the people of the soil, from the nourished people of the nourished soil, we crawl like newborns towards hope's promises, like crones and wise men towards a fountain, not of youth, nor of frozen time, but of cycles to be collaborated with and received and released with grace. Thank you. Um, just as a postscript, there were words that were collected yesterday from the audience and people that were here. There was a board out there, and there were words, you know, to answer these questions. You know, what is your, you know, a new vision for Earth? What is that for you? And those are the words that informed this spoken piece. Thank you so much.
Come on, guys, you can do much better than that. Thanks very much, Gray. Yeah. I hope my surprise was a good one, right? Yeah, thanks everyone that contributed what comes to your mind when you think about the theme of this conference, a new vision for Earth. Okay, now let me take this opportunity to invite on stage a person that is a mentor to me, but also an inspiration to many, someone that is always there to support young people. He's also a forester like me. The managing director of the Global Landscapes Forum. He's been with us since the very beginning. It's now 10 years. Forging a new vision for Earth for the last 10 years. And of course, many more years to come. Please join me in welcoming John Colmy to the stage.
Welcome to the GLF. Welcome to our 10th anniversary. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about our journey, and I'm going to do it very quickly. GLF was founded by Center for International Forestry Research, or CIFOR, and now merged with ECRAF, World Agroforestry Center, the World Bank, and UNEP. We were founded on very simple principles that still guide us today: respect, equity, inclusiveness, and a belief that we could change the world. Everyone tells me you can't, but I still believe we can. We also right from the beginning, we said, let's give a voice to people that we haven't heard but should hear from, particularly women, youth, artists, musicians, and poets. And whatever we did was this: we were going to be led by science and knowledge. We would have fun, a GLF conference like none other. Almost 2 billion people rely on insects for their nutrition around the world. But what was our lens for change was the landscape approach. It's a concept that came from the German geographers in the year about 200 years ago. Basically, it looks at every landscape holistically: the forest, the farms, the rivers, the biodiversity, the soils, and most importantly, the communities. It sounds like a simple thing that everyone believes now, but at that time it was very, very difficult. We were working in silos, farms, and all those were separately looked at. 2015, Paris, big change for the world, big change for GLF. We had 3,000 people come to the Palais de Congrès in Paris. The event manager called it looked like a rock concert. Also, the German government, GIZ up in the front, Ministry of Environment, BMUV, and BMZ, Minister of Development, invited us to set up a secretariat in Bonn. And they said, we don't know what you're going to do with this thing, but we can't wait to see. But it also was a change for the world. Johan Rockström was speaking at that time and said we had passed 4 of the 9 boundaries, planetary boundaries, that he and 28 other scientists developed. Now, as you saw a couple weeks ago, I think we passed 6. Oh, not that one. We're missing, that year we launched the SDGs. We didn't launch them, but we agreed to the 17 SDGs. And the next GLF trick was, how do we convince them that you can't solve poverty and peace and justice and gender equality one by one? You have to look at all of them. And it wasn't that easy. Everyone wants to stay in their box. And then we wanted to say, okay, we started to convince people about the landscape approach, and people started forgetting about the landscape approach and talked about landscapes. So then we launched, okay, let's go to action. The German government in particular said, okay, enough conferences, let's get moving on something else. So we launched community-led chapters. We have 25 of them now. They're all around the world. They're led by the community, they're owned by the community, and we hope to have 500 one day. We also have restoration stewards, young people that are amazing people doing restoration around the world, from Peru to the Dayak areas in Kalimantan. And then the pandemic came. That was another turning point for GLF. We kept going. We had 4 conferences, and you can see suddenly everything changed. There was a need to speak, to connect during that time. And as one of our speakers said at the time, what we learned from the pandemic, that the whole world can focus on one thing at one time. And that really stuck with me. But it also looked at the climate. We're almost doing the same thing. Climate change, the pandemic hit in China, then it hit in Italy, but it's not going to hit England, and it's not going to hit America, and it just kept coming. And now we're seeing it with climate change as well. But look at the numbers. We had increased in our interest, and this is all spontaneous. There's something here. We started with 6 people. And now this is 1.75 million engaged with our conferences every year. It'll double next year. But that is 260 times the growth of what we had when we started. Well, what did we learn? We learned, well, right from the beginning, and we kept to it, half of our speakers, half of our chapters, half of our restoration stewards are women. Everything we do. And if you want to change the narrative, you have to change the people speaking. Our speakers become ministers, and our young people become leaders. So where do we go in the next 10 years? We're going to create a movement of 1 billion people to build this vision of landscapes that are productive, prosperous, equitable, and resilient. And we're going to do it like we always did it. We're going to be guided by science and knowledge. We're going to be by science, knowledge, respect, inclusiveness, and equity. And hope. I'm very happy to see that. Hope. It's a great year to change the world, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go do it. Thank you.
Another round of applause for John. Yeah, and it's indeed a great year to change the world. Yeah, thank you very much, John, for sending us such a powerful message. Now, it's time for the most important session of the day, the opening plenary of day 2. Allow me to invite on stage the host and moderator for this session, Salina Abraham. I hope you looking forward to this opening plenary, just like I do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elvis. Thank you, John, for starting off and letting us know what that journey has looked like from Paris, from Warsaw, now to here in our own campus in Nairobi. So day 1 of the conference, for some of you who didn't join, was focused on sovereign solutions for African food systems, for farmers, from everyone across the spectrum, from consumers to policymakers. And it was an exciting day. We went from the entire morning all the way into the evening discussing what could that look like, what could the vision for Africa be. Today, we're going to shift our focus to looking at the globe. We are now entering a much more unfamiliar world than we've ever seen before. As the temperatures rise, both on land and on our oceans, we've seen flooding this year from New York to Chile to South Africa. But today, we don't want to just talk about what the problem is, how the scale of the issue, who's caused the problem. We want to unite around a possible new dream, around some solutions that we have, the places where we can find hope, that new vision for Earth. So in this opening, we're going to hear from 3 people who will outline what their vision for Earth looks like. from scientists to activists to those in government, we'll get to truly understand whether those visions are aligned and what might that take. But before we do, I'm excited to welcome our first keynote speaker, which is really important for us to ground everything in science and to understand who are the people who have been understanding those planetary boundaries, who've been writing and guiding the work of the action plan to essentially guide the climate agenda. And does that align with our new vision of Earth? So I want us to welcome online, we have, perfect. Hi, Yamina, can you hear me?
Yeah, I do hear you.
Brilliant. So join me in welcoming Yamina Saheb. She's the lead author of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, and the Senior Energy Policy Analyst at OpenEXP. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us your perspective, your opening remarks? What do we need to hear right now?
Thank you. I'm delighted to join you, even if it's online. So I would like to, I have this graph that is on the screen to explain where we are today. So this graph shows the median average temperature of the planet. It starts from the industrial era. And you see that at the beginning, it's not red. The more reddish, the more dangerous the situation we are. And you see that the more close we are to 2020, the more reddish is the graph. This means that the average temperature on the planet is going up. So we can say that this is history, this is our heritage as humanity, but then the future is in our heads. So there are different options for the future. If you look at the part that is completely red in the graph, you see that the upper one is where our current policies are leading us. So they are leading us to 3 degrees of global warming. 3 degrees of global warming is something that we cannot adapt to. Humanity cannot adapt to 3 degrees of global warming. And this is where our policies are taking us. And then if you go down in the reddish part, we could, but this is not, we are not doomed. We could avoid to be there, and we could be around 1.5 or 2 degrees and keep the planet livable for us. Importantly, in this graph, this graph comes from the latest IPCC report, synthesis report. So it summarizes actually 7 years of work of scientists from different disciplines and different countries and regions. But when you look at below this graph, you have humans. For the first time, we put humans because usually IPCC graphs we are always told that they are dry. So when you look at the humans, so you see someone born in 1950. This is my mother's generation. So this person would have experienced it when this person is now around 70 or 70-ish, and this person, by the end of her life, would have experienced some heat waves. However, this person, in the case of my mother, is among the lucky people who can afford to have an air conditioning system, because when the temperature will go up, first you can afford it, and second, the air conditioning system is working today. Because when the temperature will go up and up, air conditioning systems that we have today will not be able to cool us. And then in the middle, the bar that you see in the middle is my generation and the generation of many people, I guess, in the room and online, people born in the 80s or the 70s. And you see that for us, we will experience more heat waves than our parents. So our end of life will be more tougher than for our parents if we go with with current policies with very high emissions and very high temperature. And then comes the little baby born in 2020, and it happens that my son was born in 2020. So this boy is unlikely that he will one day be 70 like his grandmother. And this boy is going to experience more heat waves. And it is likely that this boy is going to experience hunger, even by being a European citizen, because hunger is for not just for Africa. Today, it's an issue in Africa, in developing countries. But with climate change, hunger might be an issue, might become very quickly an issue in European countries as well. So the choice for the future, our vision for the future is in our hands. Do we want the kids born today, the kids that we see today, to go into their 70s like our parents? And in this case, we must work all together to be in this very low emission scenario and very low temperature scenario. Or if we don't do that, then this means that basically we are making an end to life for our kids. I don't know. I guess for most of you, this graph is very talks a lot to us, talks to each of us, because it's about our lives, about our kids, about what we see actually, and we can do things differently. However, to do things differently, we must find a way to work collectively in collaborative way, and to end the hidden drivers of the continuation of colonialism, for example, in science, in development policies, in financing climate change and the ecological crisis, in financing the implementation of SDGs, and in all these things. If you dig deeper in all these instruments, then you will find that it's still unbalanced, and we are still working like if we were just after the Second War. And we still have the institutions of the Second War, and that's why this forum is very important to get out of to move forward actually, because the institutions that we inherited from the Second War cannot solve the problems that we have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yamina. It was really important, I think, for us to be able to see that graph aligned with the kind of human reality, and you've let us know it is possible. There are scenarios where we're able to not end up in that space. So you still have hope in moving forward, and hopefully we'll be able to collectively align on how we can address those hidden forces. We wish you were here with us in person, but we appreciate you joining from where you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. We have two additional keynotes who will give us some insight, I think, to ground the conversation and dialogue we'll step into. The second person that I want to introduce, he has been at the GLF many times before in his former capacity in government, but is now the chairperson and CEO of the Global Environment Facility. We'll now get to hear from Carlos Manuel Rodriguez, who will share some concrete actions that can realize his vision. Let's hear from Carlos.
We normally talk about the dual planetary crisis or the triple planetary crisis, talking about biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. I think that is much more than that. It's a big enchilada. We have so many things on top. And I don't think that we have a triple planetary crisis. What we have is an ecological collapse. The life supporting system of planet Earth is collapsing. And that is one of the two main problems that humanity has to confront with: ecological collapse at all scales, at the global scale. But the second most relevant challenge for me is the inability of humans to collaborate, to cooperate, and to agree so we can deal with those huge global challenges. And that is a very, very big problem. We constantly see that inability of humans to agree in the COPs, in the G20, even the G7, and that is worrisome because there is no other way to deal with those global issues unless we cooperate and we agree and we establish multilateral systems and mechanisms that can help us. So I think that we need to first recognize the dimension and the scale of this problem and really concentrate on those mechanisms, those ways by which we can agree. And even though in the past we had some very interesting agreements like the Paris Agreement or the Kunming-Montreal biodiversity framework, the implementation of it becomes extremely complicated. And I tend to believe that the way by which we can advance in ways by which we can agree and implement actions is investing on the change of our economic system. Our economic system, I would call it the neoclassic economic systems, aims for unlimited growth without recognizing planetary boundaries. So taking actions to move from this irrational economic system into a circular one is critical. And for that, we need to work a lot on policies, on politics, on regulations, and on governments. And I think that this is an area that can really help us setting the baselines for dealing with the ecological collapse and the lack of capacities of humans to agree on the important things. And there should be a major transformation in the political systems and the political structures. And this is, I believe, a topic of high interest for this conference and for this group. In that context, two elements are relevant for me, and I hope that this can be a contribution to the discussion that we will be having today, which are the need to really phase out, eliminate all of those subsidies and all of those perverse incentives that contribute to climate change and the loss of biodiversity. And we need to do generate political agreements on how to do the transition so we can repurpose those resources into something very positive for nature, positive for the people. And the other second political task that we have in front of us is the redesign of the government structures. We have organized governments and they operate through institutions, ministries, and agencies. And when you see how governments have decided how to manage the environment and the natural resources, you got too many agencies working with too many different natural resources. And the best example is what you normally see, where you have the Ministry of Environment managing renewable natural resources and the Ministries of Energy Mines managing non-renewable natural resources with different opinions, different ideas, and different concepts. We need to move towards institutions that works at the landscape level or seascape level in a more comprehensive and holistic manner. And those two elements will create the basis for those political understandings that eventually will trickle up into the international negotiations. And that is where we can generate agreements on how we implement the global environmental agreements. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Carlos, for being very clear in what you see needs to happen. This gives us a bit of guidance today, and it's a useful time to transition to our third keynote, someone who is working in the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry. I'm excited to welcome, he will be joining us live, Agus Justianto, the Director General of Sustainable Forest Management in the Indonesian Ministry of Environment. Agus, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, I hope you heard what Carlos just said. There's a need to kind of repurpose systems, structures, institutions, both in government and in the financial world. So can you tell us a bit more how the recent kind of environmental policy improvements in Indonesia align with the goal of achieving a new vision of Earth? We have a very tight schedule, so if you can tell us in a few minutes, both that perspective of the changes you're making and what more you think needs to be done. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. Yeah, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that all of us agree that we need to preserve our biodiversity as well as we need to protect our nature. Therefore, we can save our Earth from biodiversity collapse and climate catastrophe. However, on the other hand, we also realize that more than 8 million people live on Earth, and we are still struggling for poverty alleviation. Based on this condition, I consider the balance of economic, social, and ecological aspects for building a new vision for our beloved Earth. We can no longer just clash with these three aspects and only choose the priority of one of them. Basically, I consider that the sustainability of the Earth and mankind is the most important thing to consider. For this reason, I am, as the Director General of Sustainable Forest Management, consider that natural resources, particularly forest resources, on this Earth must be utilized as optimally as possible by adhering to the principle that all economic activities can be carried out on Earth as long as they are socially accepted, ecologically sustainable. That is what I can propose as material for a new vision for the Earth. Regarding the Indonesian situation now, in Indonesia, there are several policies and programs has been reinforced and improved to address challenges faced by the forestry sector and the impacts of climate change. Among the policies and program implementation that have come through significant changes and progress include, first, reorientation of forest management from timber-based to a sustainable ecosystem and community-based approaches. Second, consideration of the principle of environmental carrying capacity in forest utilization scheme. The principle is internalized into the National Forestry Plan as a macro spatial plan for forestry development for 2011 to 2030. Third, prevention of biodiversity loss within and outside conservation areas by preventing further damage to landscape of the conservation area and by enriching species. Fourth, strengthen policies and the implementation of national development by incorporating economic and environmental balance. Green economy development also provide opportunities for investment and job creation to support the national economic recovery. Fifth, affirmative policies on the community access to forest utilization, on local and regional dispute resolution, including tenurial conflict resolution, as well as on the local and other community rights. Furthermore, regarding our efforts in saving our earth, Indonesia is of the view that forests and the land use sector of FOLU play a significant role, particularly in mitigating as well as adapting to climate change. As you may be aware, most of Indonesia's greenhouse gas emission reduction will be fulfilled from the FOLU sector through systematic and integrated approach in the management of forests and other land use sector. It is expected that FOLU sector can reach the emission level of minus 140 million tons of CO2 equivalent on net sink condition by 2030. Indonesia FOLU net sink 2030 is achievable as it was developed based on more than 7 years of corrective action, experiences, and achievements. As an example, Indonesia performed consistent efforts in controlling the rate of deforestation to pursue the NDC targets. During the last 3 decades, Indonesia has reached its lowest rate of deforestation, from million hectares per year to only 113,000 hectares in the period 2021 to 2022. In the context of achieving Indonesia FOLU net sink 2030, we are convinced that restoration and rehabilitation of watershed and forest ecosystem play important roles and provide significant contribution to emission reduction. The government of Indonesia, supported by all stakeholders, will continue the efforts on peatland ecosystem restoration and then mangrove ecosystem restoration. And we also have a program regarding the forest and land rehabilitation. Moreover, forest biodiversity conservation is also part of the main concern. This may include designing and analyzing data in conservation areas and outside the state forest on nature conservation, and then management of biodiversity, species and genetic conservation, environmental services utilization in conservation areas, and environmental quality improvement programs through conservation management. Forest biodiversity conservation also covers natural forests outside conservation areas with protection functions with a medium to high priority index, which includes 6.9 million hectares and 2.2 million hectares with a high to extremely high priority index. I think Indonesia is urging all nations and all entities to work collaboratively to save Mother Earth. We have shared our deliveries of what we pledged and requested others to do so. Indonesia is ready to take further bolder action for the Earth. I thank you.
Thank you so much. It was helpful to hear that you feel we need to really reorient the way that we're thinking about nature and forestry, from an industry that's producing goods to a sustainable community-led approach. It's something that we're hearing again. How can we facilitate and create the conditions where nature is a true partner, a true, friend in fighting this climate crisis? So we have used our minds, our analytical minds in thinking about this problem. We've talked a bit about feelings, but there's often a different way that we can gauge kind of new information, and that's through images and through art. So I'm excited to now invite us all to visualize a new vision for Earth. What new information might we see in an image? And I want to introduce Emilia Santos, who is a Brazilian visual artist with a master's degree in multimedia, who will share with us their vision for Earth.
E quando a gente reflete sobre, né, esse novo olhar para a Terra, né, é justamente parar de olhar para o ser humano como um protagonista, né, dessa jornada. O que eu queria deixar como mensagem, né, o trabalho que eu fiz tenta representar é justamente a gente parar para pensar que o ser humano, ele não é o protagonista da vida. A vida é maior que o ser humano e que a gente precisa observar, olhar, né, o ambiente como a gente, nós somos como meio ambiente, né? Nós estamos, não existe fora, né, do meio ambiente, não existe ser humano sem ambiente. Né? Então, a imagem, ela é uma onda que quebra em dois lugares e a gente tem um pescador imerso nessa onda e ele está sendo iluminado por um drone que é um guaraná, que é uma fruta de guaraná, que na verdade funciona como um farol, né, para essa pesca ser bem sucedida, para essa vida ser segura. As culturas indígenas, elas são esse farol para a gente pensar essa nova perspectiva de vida terrestre. Eu acho que é muito, muito importante a gente fazer esse chamado de que a comunidade internacional olhe para o Brasil, olhe para as comunidades indígenas como esse farol de esperança para a gente conseguir ter uma faísca de esperança e de vida nesse futuro que está por vir.
Applause for Emilia's vision. Thank you so much for sharing that vision for a new Earth. I'm sure there's many more that might be coming to your mind as you think about what that new Earth looks like. I loved the lighthouse, which helped keep that life safe. And now that we've had a chance to really dive into potential visions, I want to bring in online two women who need no introduction, who will also be able to share their visions and discuss in more detail what do we really need to do to move towards that collective action. So join me in welcoming Vandana Shiva, Indian scholar, ecofeminist, editor, author, the list goes on, and Aisha Siddiqa, co-founder of Polluters Out. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you? Can you see us, hear us? Okay, I think both of you are muted. We can't hear you, Dr. Vandana.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
And hi, Aisha. Brilliant. Okay, can we start off perhaps with Aisha? Can you tell us what is your vision for Earth?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and not just having me, but in the presence of Dr. Shiva. I'm really honored to be here. So in order to answer this question, I have to go back to the roots with which I started my activism. And I wanted to share a poem with you because this is where my vision for the world is more or less materialized. And the poem is called on another panel about climate change. They ask me to solve the future, and all I've got is a love poem. So it goes something like this. What if the future is soft and revolution is so kind that there is no end to us in sight? Whole cities breathe and bad luck is bested by a promise to the leaves. To withstand your own end is difficult. The future frolics about, promised to no one, as is her right. Rage against injustice makes the voice grow harsher yet. If the future leaves without us, the silence that will follow will be an unspeakable nothing. What if we convince her to stay? How rare and beautiful it is that we exist. What if we stun existence one more time? When I wake up, get out of bed, my 7-year-old cousin with her ruptured belly tags along. Then follows my grandmother, aunts, my other cousins, and the violent shape of their drinking water. The earth remembers everything. Our bodies are the color of the earth, and we're nobodies, been born from so many apocalypses. What's one more? Love is still the only revenge. It grows each time the earth is set on fire. But for what it's worth, I'd do this again. Gamble on humanity 100 times over. Commit to life onto life as the trees fall and take us with them. I'd follow love into extinction. Thank you. I will pass it on to my colleague.
Thank you so much, Aisha. We can feel you and your words in this room here. Thank you for sharing them. Dr. Vandana, can you tell us, building on that too, you've been around for a while, you've been sharing what you feel needs to be done. For right now, what do you see as your new vision for Earth?
My vision for Earth today, in the middle of the threatened collapse, is the same vision with which I started my ecological life 50 years ago. And the vision is that the Earth is living, and we need to get out of the illusion that she's just dead matter for extraction and exploitation for the next round and the next round and the next round. And as the living Earth, she carries these solutions. After all, she brought the temperature down from 270 degrees to 13 degrees over 4 billion years. Carbon dioxide down from 98% to 0.03%. 4,000 parts per million to 250 parts per billion. And of course, in the last 200 years of fossil fuel and 100 years of oil, we've been messing it up. But we don't look to the oil civilization and the billionaires and the big tech barons for the solutions because they are looking for the next wave of super profits. We turn towards the earth, we turn towards indigenous people, we turn towards the young, we turn towards women. And learning from the earth all the work of the Landscape Forum, of regenerating biodiversity, of agriculture, forestry, of pastoralism, here is the promise. Because my work in Navdanya over these last 3.5 decades shows that we have the power with the earth of limiting the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees and drawing down to 32 to 34 gigatons that need to be drawn down. Through the miracle of life on this planet, through photosynthesis in every green leaf, taking the carbon dioxide and the free energy of the sun and giving us abundant food and all our needs and the oxygen we breathe. And in that little mycorrhizal fungi in the soil that grows when we take care of the earth is my understanding of democracy, of self-organized, decentered freedom of the last being on this planet, the last human being, the last child, the last woman. 13 gigatons, it has the potential to draw out 36% of the emissions through these wonderful fungi that need a good habitat to be able to grow, feed the plants, and feed humans. We live in a miracle. My vision of the earth is to understand scientifically what that miracle is about and live according to the laws of the earth, the laws of living systems.
Thank you. So we're going to keep both speakers on to discuss a bit more because there's a lot that you've just given us. The question running in my mind is, in crisis, who do you turn to? in Aisha, you said, those whom you love, those who have ancestral wisdom and have practice, those are succeeding in managing crisis. Or potentially you look at the miracles and find hope and inspiration and new insight in them. We just heard from scientist, a funder, a government official, that we clearly need to kind of repurpose systems, institutions, structures. There's different ways you could go about that, working on your little piece of the puzzle, changing policies. But I'm also reflecting on, we started this plenary with a spoken word piece from Gray Oletza, who said, "We crawl like newborns." And so I'm thinking of us having this huge challenge, but also feeling like we're crawling like newborns. And I want to get your insight into, the gap between the scale of the problem. We feel like we know what we need to do. We as a collective, those who we love, those who have the insights, we need to move in a unified direction. And yet we're still a bit like newborns. Dr. Vandana, maybe because you've been around for a while, can you give us some insight into how your perspectives may be evolving on this issue? Are we still newborns?
Well, as a 70-year-old, I say that I wouldn't be able to do the work I do over this long period of time, half a century now, without being a newborn every day. A newborn willing to learn, go deeper into the fact that the more biodiversity we protect and intensify, the more food we grow. Our research is showing that we could feed 2 times the world's population by protecting biodiversity rather than wiping it out. So we have to be newborns in going out of the dystopia of the monoculture of the mind that has brought us to this crisis, and living on a daily basis as newborns in a living world full of biodiversity as part of that web of life, as part of that biodiversity. Yeah, we are newborns.
I love that. Finding power in that, finding an insight in that lens, instead of assuming perhaps that we're all such great experts with all the answers. Aisha, I want to turn to you. What are your thoughts here?
I know I started the panel with a poem, and I probably said a lot of purple prose. But for practicality, as an activist myself, and now somebody that is working at the intergovernmental system, the question of whether we are newborns, sometimes as a young activist, or the idea that that at least policy and the governmental space is infantilized, is something very difficult to get behind. Particularly because, as it was referred to before, the issue of fossil fuel proliferation, the issue of using land for the purposes of single crop agriculture, all of these issues have been identified for decades now. And as somebody who has been working deeply within the intergovernmental system, I also know that the COPs are older than I am. The negotiations are older than I am. The dialogues are older than I am. And they're going in a circular pattern. And so there is a part of life that one has to live in a manner where one notices the beauty and life of it, just to stay sane. But there's a dichotomy to this, which I don't think should be applied equally to people who have been working towards the climate issue for decades now, because I think there's, with all due respect, a career built around keeping the issue alive so folks can keep their positions and not solve said issue. And we can definitely go into deeper into all of the different ways this is manifesting. In the grand scheme of things, humanity is indeed a very young species. And if the science tells us anything during our time on planet Earth, we've caused a great deal more damage than any species to come before us. But at the same time, I think because we are a miracle of a species with the ability to figure out what problems we are creating, we also have the ability to solve those problems in lightning speed too. It's not like we are incapable, and so I would really present that as the opposite end of looking at this vision to get to a place where we are indeed at a 1.5 degree world as opposed to a 3 degree world.
I really appreciate your reflection on kind of the vested interests that come into play. Because often, we talk about the systems, but I'm not sure we talk enough about how they work and interact within us as well. And so, there is that concept where you go to kind of into the organization to change it, and you come out and the organization's changed you. And so I think it's important that we constantly reflect as kind of activists, practitioners, whatever the case is, we're all part of this system, and there's an immense amount of power that we maybe have been asleep to, that we have in changing the dynamics and the forces that are at play within these structures and these institutions. We only have a few minutes left. I appreciated your point, Aisha, in the beginning, that you're asked to come to these panels and, dig out some hope in a time that is not feeling so positive. I don't want to ask that from you, but I do want to understand what your final words or advice would be to everyone, both in this room and the thousands that are online, who are, understanding analytically and technically the issues that we have. But as you mentioned, we've been having those conversations for a long time. What would you, tell us to do? How would we open our minds in a different way today to inspire?
I'm not going to say anything novel, actually, but I know that the GLF is taking place in Nairobi, and African states and African governments have been enduring the brunt of the climate crisis, and for that reason, it's an appeal to the people in the room, more than it is an appeal to the G20 countries and the G7 countries, and that is we need to end the era of fossil fuel. We have 6 years to stay below 1.5 degrees of warming, and that really does mean thinking about our economic systems differently. That really does mean thinking about our energy systems differently, and in massive investing in renewable energies. But at the same time, this fight and this dialogue that the developing world keeps having, which is that we need to proliferate oil and gas in order to meet the colonizer world's ability to be as economically stable as they are, is going to run out. That stance is not going to serve us after another 15 years. Yes, the developed world needs time. And I say this as a Pakistani, the developed world needs time the developing world needs time to meet the developed world. But at the same time, the new oil and gas infrastructure is taking place in the global south. The massive energy projects that are allowing fossil fuel proliferation are taking place in the global south, and we need bravery from our governments to say no to these things and to put in place measures where they ensure not just the destruction of the species in our diverse habitats, but also ensure that in totality we as a species are able to thrive 100 years from now. And I think as an activist, it's been really, really unfortunate seeing the global south governments and the global south countries that we heavily advocate for at the international space making the decisions that will put their own citizens at risk, and then planet Earth at risk, and lastly future generations at risk. So last few words are the era of fossil fuel needs to come to an end very soon.
Yeah, so set your sights on something different. I appreciate that. Final words from you, Dr. Vandana.
Yeah. So, I'm trained in quantum physics and quantum theory, but I spent the last 40 years looking at agriculture, particularly fossil agriculture, which has caused devastation, 90% of the species destruction, birds, the insects, the plants, 75% of the soil and water destruction, 75% chronic diseases. That same systems that making the earth sick is making us sick. So getting oil out of our economies, but getting oil out of our food is the first step. And as I mentioned earlier, we grow more food, we grow healthier food, we regenerate the earth. We can meet both the climate targets and abolish hunger, and the second SDG, the zero hunger. We can reach it by working with the earth, respecting her laws, respecting her limits. And what I've learned over these many years is we've got so used to thinking that life begins in largeness. No, that little crawling child was a fetus. And then it becomes the adults that we are walking around. Life begins in the small. And the life of the soil with billions of soil organisms, the diversity of plants, and the life in our gut, the 100 trillion microbes that are us, that tells us that the small, in coherence, beginning with the tiniest molecule and the tiniest cell, is the beginning of life. That's why our work must begin in communities, as the Landscape Forum is about, as my work in building community seed banks, community agriculture, community economies, living economies. We, as brilliant species, have this capacity. As a young species, can learn from our ancestors who have been around 99.9% other species, but we can learn from the women, we can learn from the indigenous people, we can learn from the peasants. It's all there for us to practice, but we must set a target that by 2030, we get oil out of our food system to meet the food needs of the people and the planetary needs of a stable climate.
Thank you so much. Can I get a round of applause for our incredible dialogue with you both? I wish we could discuss this for longer. You are two people who I've been really grateful to be in conversation with. You've left us with so much to think about, both personally, both when it comes to the issues and the solutions that we should focus on. I'm resonating with the idea that, you can't leave economics with the economists, and that we all need to be part of building this new economy and this new vision for Earth. Thank you for being with us. So I want to now transition to our closing keynote, who will bridge and, serve as a bridge between this conversation and the next session, which we will have, a Dragon's Den, a presentation of possible new business cases and solutions. This will be presented by Vivienne Yeda, who is the Director General of the East African Development Bank, to tell us, from the perspective of where we're sitting today, what do we really need to realize this vision? What are the concrete steps to visualize this new economy?
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends, you have all heard it before. The biodiversity collapse and the climate crisis is impacting every corner of the earth. It's time, in fact, it's overdue for a new vision for Earth. What is our vision for Earth and humanity? And why do we need it? These are questions we must ask, and more importantly, address ourselves. A new vision for Earth that ensures the viability and survival of life in all its forms is imperative and so very urgent. A vision that brings humanity together in a joint and sustained effort to mitigate and reverse the adverse effects of our own social and economic activities. As custodians of Earth, humankind is failing. urgently need a new vision for Earth, where success metrics are adjusted so that the contribution to the planet and all people is incentivized before adjusting for financial profits. And all irresponsible acts against the Earth are criminalized and heavily penalized. And why do we need a new vision for Earth? The biodiversity collapse and the climate crisis is impacting every corner of the Earth. And we have literally run out of time. The evidence is everywhere. No location is spared. And life in all its forms faces an existential threat. In our thousands of years of existence, this is probably the biggest threat, not only to Earth, but to humankind itself. It is incumbent upon each and every one of us to do right, and to take radical measures in our lifestyles to make the necessary and bold choices. So how is the East African Development Bank supporting the new vision? For the last 56 years, EADB has been supporting sustainable projects in the East African region with strict adherence to environmental and social standards. While all these initiatives are laudable, they are not enough. EADB is therefore calling on multilateral development banks and regional economic communities to implement joint projects that provide significant gains in the fight against climate change. For example, we propose intercontinental projects to rehabilitate forests and water bodies while emphasizing climate change mitigation. What are some concrete steps? At COP28, RECs and MDBs should consider and form a special partnership to address the low-hanging fruits, like rehabilitating the two lungs of the world, the Amazon and the Congo Basin forests, without the need for lengthy seminars, meetings, papers, and studies. We believe that all has been said over the decades, and once again during this conference. It is now time to walk this talk. For example, multilateral resolutions to effectively ban logging and decimation of natural forests, and more importantly, the sale and transportation of such products. Measures to stop, not only reduce carbon emissions, but also actively sequester carbon that is already in the atmosphere. Measures to disincentivize carbon emissions and all forms of pollution by immediately levying heavy taxes on polluters. This revenue should be used to provide grants to communities adversely affected by climate change, particularly in developing countries, and the effects of polluting countries. Mobilizing finance to fund climate action globally. Reforming the procedures within multilateral banks for accessing climate-related finance so that the turnaround time is effective and is 3 months or less. And also introduce more innovative climate finance solutions to support underserved communities. In conclusion, we all very recently experienced the effects of a global crisis, the COVID pandemic. I'd like to suggest to you that the pandemic was merely a storm in a teacup compared to the catastrophic effects of climate change. Because, as we say in Kiswahili, wakati unapita. Time is passing. There's no more time for greenwashing, or fig leaves. The ball is very much in your court and mine. I thank you.
Thank you, Vivian, for pointing out that all has been said, and now we want to focus on the solutions that take us into the future. I'm going to head off and pass it to the next plenary, and I love Zaisha's word. I'd follow love into extinction, but I'd hope let's follow love out of extinction. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks very much, Salina, and our amazing panelists. Just like Vivian has said, the ball is in your court. So it's up to you what you're going to use that ball with or for. Are you going to kick it to another court? Are you going to fuel it? That's a question for you. Yeah, so we're now going to transition to another session here in the conference hall, which is the Dragon's Den plenary, where we will have several nature-based projects pitch their work to our panel of investors who ask questions and share feedback. But also in the GLF Pavilion, C4 Craft will be hosting another session about sustainable palm oil and agriculture. And also for those that have pre-registered for the climate circle, it will be starting at 11:30 at the listening tree. Of course, it's currently full. It was for pre-registration, but you can drop by and see if you can find an open spot. So the Dragon's Den will be starting right about now. And let me take this opportunity to invite the moderator for this session, Samuel Kabiru. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. Are you excited? We are super excited to be here. In our next session, certainly we are going to showcase some of the innovative nature-based solution companies that are doing an amazing work. So welcome to Dragon's Den. I'll be your moderator. My name is Samuel Kabiru. I work with World Resources Institute, managing our capacity building work, and at the same time deploying our finance to restoration entrepreneurs across Africa. The Dragon's Den session is an opportunity for project developers to present their groundbreaking initiatives to an esteemed panel of judges who are here with us. Some of them are actually joining us virtually. And this panel of judges are industry leaders and experts in their respective fields. So the panel will evaluate these projects based on their potential for environmental impact, financial viability, and scalability. The projects presented today have been identified through calls for projects organized by GLF, but also Explorer Land. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce our judges who are joining us today. And I kindly ask them if they can join me up on stage. Judges, please join us. Let's give them a hand of a clap as they come. Thank you so much for your acceptance to be part of this panel of judges. We'll be joined by one more virtually. So at this particular moment, let me give them a chance to introduce themselves, starting with Michael.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Edu Sasu. I work with Partnership for Forest. What we do is to catalyze investment in the forest and land use sector. We basically work in 4 regions across the globe: West and Central Africa, East Africa, Southeast Asia, and then Latin America. I'm with the West and Central African team as a senior associate with project development and monitoring and evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Next.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Henrietta Siedu. I also work with the UK aid-funded Partnership for Forest Program in West and Central Africa, and I'm the Senior Commerce, External Relations, and Knowledge Associate for the region, and we incubate businesses right from partnership to scale up in commodity-driven landscapes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henrietta. Let's now cross over to our virtual judge. Feel free to introduce yourself. Aurel, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Good morning, everyone. Very nice to be here today. So my name is Aurélie Dumont. I work as an independent advisor on carbon and land use projects. I've been working with international NGOs, the UN, and multilateral development banks, and focusing on social, environmental, and governance benefits. So I'm very much looking forward to joining you today.
Thank you so much. Let's give them a hand of a clap. Certainly, they will be very crucial in this discussion today, helping us evaluate the project that I'm going to present today. Let's move forward and now allow me to introduce the project developers. These are innovative entrepreneurs across the world with innovative solution. With us here today, we have Mr. Bernard Moshiri from Horizon Business Ventures. Maybe Bwana Moshiri, you can wave to the crowd. That is Bwana Moshiri. And then virtually, we have Ms. Marina Gavado from UBA Sustainability Institute. I'm sure we are going to see her on the screen. And we have Mr. Chari Ropad from Tree Economy, who is also joining us virtually. So we want to move to the next step, and here is where we get to listen to the pitches from these amazing project developers. But before we do that, I want to invite you to help me manage time. So we are going to give them 3 minutes each to present. So I invite you, so the moment I raise my hand, you will help me clap for them, and at that point, they will stop pitching. Is that okay? Can we try? Good, thank you. Thank you so much. So to start us off, I'm going to invite Mr. Moshiri from Horizon Business Ventures. Thank you.
Good morning. I've already been introduced, so I'll go ahead. Do you know one business model can be or might be the key to redefine restoration of landscape narrative? Modeling our forest conservation and being the key to meeting the growing demand of natural products. Welcome to Horizon Business Ventures. We practice circular entrepreneurship in its truest form, and we are not only developing a business, we are developing a sustainable future. The problem we are trying to address is three interrelated issues: climate change, poverty, and deforestation. And our solutions are driven by 3 factors: the existence of rich biodiversity within the forest landscape and rich community knowledge, technology for adding value to non-wood forest products, and market for essential oils. Our market opportunity is based on the fact that in Kenya, there was an income of $98 million in 2022 on essential oils, and this grows by 12% every year. Globally, in 2022, the market for essential oil was 8.8 billion, growing by 8%, and it's projected to be 15.3 billion in 2027. We have a passionate team, qualified in all ways, technically and professionally, and most of them are locally based, and they have a passion for this business. Our traction so far has been we are working with the forest adjacent community, who are the key suppliers of raw materials, and this raw materials is based on seeds or nuts from the forest and the leaves, biomass. So we have 2 processes. One is screw-press process that extract oil from seeds, and steam distillation, as you can see there. So in this way, we are working with about 400 households. We have created 14 jobs directly and planted mostly almost 300,000 native trees. And we have generated income, as you can see, since 2022, projected to be $335,000 in 2024. The other aspect of attraction is that we have attracted a number of investment opportunities. One of them is CIF. I hope they are represented here.
Thank you so much, Mushiri. I see your time is up. Thank you so much. I'll give you an opportunity perhaps to say what you have when we have Q&A. But at this moment, let me turn back to the judges to give feedback or ask any question. Michael.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. With all the indicators, it looks like you are improving the lives of some smallholders. My question is, what governance structure, systems, or agreements do you have in place to protect forest, as well as improve that biodiversity?
We are working with three institutional structures within the community. One of them is Kenya Forest Services, who are the hosts of these public forests, CFA, Community Forest Associations, and user groups. And these user groups are members of CFA that are supposed or that have access to these forest resources. So we have contractual engagement with the user groups.
Thank you so much. Let me turn back to our virtual judge, Aurel. I don't know whether you have any question for Bernard.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. Very interesting to see that he chose to work with vulnerable species to contribute to a wider landscape restoration. My question is more focused on women and youth. We know that traditionally they tend to be a bit less engaged in activities. So how do they contribute to tree planting, harvesting, and processes, and how do they benefit from the project?
Yeah, we basically work mostly with youth and women, and they form groups. And these groups are divided into two. One is seed collection groups or biomass collection groups within the forest. These groups earn income from the delivery of these raw materials. The other group that we work with are forest nursery groups, community nursery groups that basically raise seedlings from these native trees, and they also earn income from the seedlings.
I'm wondering whether there's any other question from the judges. We still have time.
Okay, let me add an extra one. So all these benefits to smallholders, how does that put them above the minimum wage or the poverty level?
On average, a household will earn about $2 per day. But I'll give an example. During the collection of nuts, they will earn even $10 per day. But of course, these are seasonal. But for those who are delivering the biomass from leaves, they will probably earn an average of $4 per day, above the average household earning per day.
Thank you, Bernard. Aurel, did you have any other question?
No, I think that was a good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bernard, maybe is there any information that you didn't share that you may want to pass to the audience?
Yeah, I would say with a proven business case and a robust team and a clear strategy, you can't go wrong if you join us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's give him a hand of a clap as he sits. Indeed, a great presentation supporting local communities. Thank you, Mr. Bernard. Let's move to the next project developer, Marina from UBA Sustainability. Feel free to pitch, and your time starts now.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Marina Gavaldão. It's an honor to be here, and I'm the Executive Director of UBA Sustainability Institute. Jussara is one of our initiatives. It's a flagship species of palm tree from the Atlantic forest in Brazil, one of the world's hotspots of biodiversity. It is unfortunately threatened of extinction. This ecosystem is also the home of 150 million people. Our initiative takes place in southern Bahia, near Ilhéus, where traditionally shaded cocoa plantations are in place for decades. Since 2021, the program has an objective to empower women in small to medium farmers, organic, family farmers, that have limited or no access to financial and technical support. The activity's focus is to develop a regenerative economy through the design and implementation of agroforestry and forest restoration models, and to develop fair supply chains. We target the implementation of 2,000 hectares or 5 million trees in 7 years, and that will support approximately 1,000 families. For the first phase, we are expecting to support 171 families. All that to develop products and ecosystem service of the standing forests. The program has the ambition to support food security, agroecological networks, and the structure of increased added value products as chocolate, cocoa and cupuaçu butter, and Jussaí, a potential product from the Jussara palm tree, nurseries and seed collectors networks. We expect to reinforce existing and create additional legal, financial, and technical hubs to increase income in this area where most of its inhabitants are poor, and reclaim social justice. Jussara program has the aim to increase social environmental resilience and to mitigate climate change. We are convinced that syntropic and organic agroforestry is competitive with latifundio, conventional monoculture models, shifting the paradigm from an scarcity, unequal, and destructive optics to a creation of an abundant and more equal landscape. This holistic approach requires to develop blended finance mechanisms and specific instruments to leverage in enabling conditions for access to land, capital, and technical support, especially for women and youth, respecting the current forest land cover and social biodiversity. We seek financial partners and sponsors to fund through grants and seed money the initial steps required to structure and the facilities of to establish key supply chains, infrastructure, and plantations, as well as corporates and foundations that can purchase products or climate contributions or even social impacts from this project. Our social business applies the most of the highest quality standards and procedures to monitor the impacts and the social environmental evolution we create. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for a great presentation. Let's now turn to our judges. And Henrietta, I don't know whether you have any feedback or any questions.
Thanks, Marina, for a good presentation. I think you did mention of blended finance for this project. And one of the key things I'm looking at for, or my question would be as an investor, it's the perceived risk you've identified and what are the mitigation plans you have? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. In terms of risks, we have several risks that are actually underlying risks of plantations and agricultural practice. That is, for example, climate change or aging population. And another one is that the lack of funds to implement the plantations and the monitoring and all the technical support we expect to implement in the long run. So I think for climate change, there's not much to do unless develop programs like this and really put pressure on governments and corporates and every human being on Earth to try to avoid pollution. So we're really convinced that our program is in the cornerstone of mitigation and adaptation to climate change. One of the things that we that are actually mitigation actions is that we don't rely on external inputs like with mineral fertilizers and such. So most of the agroecological practice, they are actually quite free from external inputs. And another thing is that we continue to fundraise for the program and to develop with the local communities the strategies and instruments they will be managing themselves. So in terms of mitigations risk from an investment perspective, I think climate change is one. And to recapitulate, that we expect that this kind of activity will be more adapted and will mitigate climate change at the same time. And sorry, and the fact of involving the aging population, my apologies, is also important that we are working with the families and ensuring that we have the youth and the women involved, which is quite challenging because most of them have lack of access to land tenure and other financial instruments like loans and so on. So that's why we need grants and seed money to start and support these women to regularize land tenure and give additional support to overcome, let's say, these structural inequalities that are there for several decades and several centuries. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. Michael, any question? Yes, thank you for the presentation. So mine goes to the smallholders. I know there's a component for farmers on your pitch. Can you highlight the main incentives that will be going to these farmers on your program?
Yes. So we work with direct payments, notably when we use the metric of number of trees, and we have additional funding. For example, we are working with development of business plans for nurseries, seed collection, and we are starting also a plan for to consolidate some supply chains that have a big potential. In this case, the farmers that are involved in the discussions, we have lead farmers working with us. So in addition to have the payments directly, they are quite involved in the design of the projects that we have. And of course, they will harvest their production. It's them. So our support now is really to develop the technical aspects and fine-tune the models, the agroforestry models that of course will be adapted to each farmer, because each person has a dream and has a will to develop something in their farm. So we're not imposing a model. So they first get funds to support the plantations. Second, they get the harvest for them. And in third place, they are also involved in the projects, let's say the sub-projects of our program themselves and their communities. We are working with just an additional point is that they are working, a lot of them in communities and in groups, agroecological groups. And then we also support the fact that they are communities that are Afro-descendants. There are rural settlements in Brazil that, I don't know if you are familiar, but in Brazil, there never been the agrarian reform. So there are social movements that fight for the distribution of the land, and we work with these communities. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you so much. Marina, let's give Marina a hand of a clap. Thank you. Next, we are going to have Chari from Tree Economy presenting. Chari?
Hi there, good morning everyone. Imagine a world where enjoying a hazelnut not only tantalizes your taste buds, but also enriches the environment and uplifts communities. Today, I present to you an innovative nature-based carbon sequestration project in the mountains of Bhutan that also fosters social and economic growth among smallholder farming communities. Mountain Hazelnuts is a public-private partnership with the Royal Government of Bhutan, working with 8,000 smallholder farmers to provide trees, technical assistance, and agricultural inputs in the establishment of hazelnut orchards. We are seeking $3.5 million of investment to match existing commitments to scale operations for long-term impact and profitability. The business model is simple but effective. Hazelnut saplings grown in our own nursery are delivered free of charge to smallholder farmers. Trees will be planted on degraded or fallow land without ploughing or tillage in sustainable contour rows which help to stabilize eroding mountain soils. During the planting period, thorough monitoring support is provided to farmers in two ways. First, Mountain Hazelnut's remote management and traceability system, which provides access to experts, operational data in field, incident reporting, logistics management, and tree care services. Secondly, Mountain Hazelnuts will be supported by Tree Economy's proprietary digital MRV technology to monitor carbon pools and land area, ensuring that carbon credits generated from hazelnut orchards are of the highest quality. The business model will provide two revenue streams. Firstly, through hazelnut production and sales, which is projected to be cash flow positive by 2029, driven by growing demand from India, as well as existing long-term demand from Europe. We have letters of intent from 4 of the world's largest buyers looking to diversify their supply from the existing status quo. Alongside hazelnuts, income is generated through carbon credits, with a projected 500,000 tons of carbon sequestered over a 35-year lifetime. Together, these income streams benefit the community, investors, and project developers, whilst also ensuring a high environmental impact. strong economic forecasts are supported by a strong management team with over a decade of business development and country behind them. The team is comprised of experts in the field of agroforestry, finance, and remote sensing technology, including the CEO, Dr. Sean Watson, with over 20 years experience across agriculture and infrastructure projects in Asia. Dr. Watson is supported by Jeff Nichols, who has more than 30 years experience in managing Asian forestry projects, as well as the co-founders, Daniel Spitzer and Teresa Law, experienced financial professionals. On the carbon side, the team at Tree Economy bring deep expertise in ecology, digital MRV, and finance to help ensure that credits generated are of the highest quality. We hope you enjoyed our pitch and can see for yourself the opportunity to develop a scalable and impactful solution that enriches both vulnerable communities and the natural world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shari, certainly we did enjoy your pitch right on time. Now let me turn to our judges. Aurel, virtually, do you have any question, feedback to Shari?
Thank you so much, Charlie, for the presentation. It's great to see that this project has already attracted and mobilized investments. I was wondering if you could share a bit more about the exit strategy of the project to ensure that the farmers' capacities on sustainable management of hazelnut trees remain, and how to also maintain the carbon sequestration beyond the lifetime of the project.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. So there's two options really. The first option is to sustain an operating company with long-term dividends. We think the second option is probably more likely, i.e. a trade sale for a downstream company. We will have created a premium value to strategic buyers, providing high quality hazelnut supply, which provides geographical diversification and improved CSR outcomes versus the status quo. At the moment, about 70% of all hazelnuts are grown in one country. In terms of how farmers would be protected in such a strategy, firstly, the structure of the company is established under Bhutanese law with a 30-year MOU, which limits any significant adjustment to the model. Secondly, more kind of existentially, the farmers' capacity, or ensuring farmers' capacity, is really integral to the long-term success of the venture, based on mutual dependence both between growers, the growers and the company must both benefit for it to work. So any exit partner would want to maintain that status quo and would also be further incentivized from a market position perspective to maintain this capacity alongside the environmental and social governance attributes. The MOU that I discussed that has been signed in 2009 comes up for renewal in 2039. There is an option for a 30-year extension on that. And lastly, on the carbon rights as established at the moment, so 60% of them go to the community, they are retained whatever option is pursued in terms of an exit.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Shari, yeah, and Arieta, any question, feedback?
So I do thank Charlie for that good presentation, and I'm happy this project cuts across quite multiple streams of income for these farmers. My question, it's on the landowners you're working with in terms of carbon payment to them. How do you plan to manage conflicts should it arise? Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, in terms of the carbon payments and in terms of how that is enshrined in the contracts we have them. So we have 25-year grower agreements. They receive 60% of the carbon revenues for the lifetime of the project, as I said to Aurelie, regardless of if the company is sold. They maintain those incomes. In terms of conflicts, it's a great question. So Mountain Hazelnuts employs a large field extension staff network, excuse me, who are responsible for meeting with partner growers on a regular basis, including addressing any grievances. We have a grievance mechanism built into the kind of articles of association. And if that fails to resolve the issue, the legal contract that we have with the landowner and the farmer would be adjudicated by the local courts. Up to now, there have been no conflicts. And I think there's a kind of structural advantage. It's a small society that has informal resolution mechanisms anyway, and very clear land ownership makes such issues escalating extremely rare.
Thank you so much. Shari, any other question to Shari? One more, Shari.
from Anarieta.
Maybe you can take us through maybe the certification or traceability system you have for the hazelnuts.
So the hazelnuts at the moment, we're selling them whole kernel is the idea currently. Part of the investment that we're looking for, though, is to build a facility in country, which will allow us to crack those into the individual, the nut underneath it, which is an advantage. It's a high price point. Also allows us to ship more volume. The certification is with the Ministry of Agriculture. We work very, very closely with them. They set the floor price, I should have mentioned this, for the hazelnut growers, which is constantly up for review by them to make sure that they're getting a fair deal and that the product that we're sending out meets the highest quality standards.
Thank you so much, Shari. Aurel, any other question?
Yeah, if we have a bit of time. So this project is really working very closely with the smallholder farmers, and I was wondering, how are these farmers involved in the governance structure and the decision making of the project?
Yeah, so as I said, we employ this large field extension staff network. So we have people on the ground, so we understand what the issues are, what the grievances are. We are committed to reaching numbers of kind of equality, both with kind of female-led farm households and in terms of youth involvement. I think the key element to ensuring they're involved in the governance structure is we're going to be bringing in a grower representative onto the board of directors of the operating company in country. So there will be increased transparency and ensuring accountability for everyone in the company for those people who are actually providing the raw material.
Great, thank you so much. So those were the three pitches that we had lined up today. Let's give them a hand of a clap one more time. Indeed, sitting here, listening to them, you see there is quite a lot of opportunities. There are quite a number of business models indeed that are geared towards providing solution to the challenge that we continue to face. 65% of our lands continue to be degraded, 48% of our forests continue to be degraded, and hence affecting a third of our communities. And from this project, you can certainly tell that there is a goodwill, there is the drive, there is the passion to be able to restore degraded lands, but at the end of the day, not only profiting, but at the same time, creating an impact to the communities. So thank you so much to our project developers. Now I want to turn to the plenary and just wondering whether you have any question to the project. Plenary, any questions you may want addressed by our three amazing project developers? Yeah, I can see one hand right there. You have 3 minutes to ask your question and your time starts now. Please, if you can sort the microphone.
It's not working. Wait,
no, it's not working.
What is the opportunity for the hazelnut growers to buy out the company?
That's an excellent question. It's not one that we have explored at the moment, but certainly one that we would probably like to explore further. I guess having representation on the board would allow them to explore that mechanism a bit further. It's an excellent question, and I'll be honest with you, that's the first time I've really considered that as a potential exit strategy. We've been focusing, as I said, more on the kind of downstream market and the potential for vertical integration. We have a profit sharing mechanism with them. 10% of the company's profits go back into them. So I'm sure there's potential for that to be converted into some kind of equity ownership, if not for total employee ownership, but at least for some stake in it, which would obviously give them a long-term skin in the game and some stake into the direction of the company. But it's an excellent idea and one we'll explore.
Thank you. Any other question? Yeah, I see 2 hands here. I might be forced to only take one, depending on time. Yeah, maybe a gentleman right here.
Thank you very much. My name is Tutilo Mudumba, and I work with Kabi. And my question is to everyone. And I'm interested in what impact the new trees we are growing might have, especially given the problems we are facing now with alien invasives. And to the gentleman here in the room, what are those species you're using to make the bio-oils? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe we can start with Mr. Moshiri, who is here. Yeah, maybe you can provide the microphone.
Yeah, when Kenyans realize business cases and income generation from trees, they stop cutting. And that is the value they place on this. So they actually don't cut them. And in most cases, they increase them. They domesticate them in their farm because it's more or less like a future cash crop. Your next question was?
The species?
We are using native trees. What we did in the beginning of this project, we did an ethnobotanical survey within the forest, capturing community knowledge on the trees, and we selected the trees we are going to promote on the basis of their commercial viability or commercial attributes. So we are integrating these trees within the farms and also conserving them within the forest based on the income. The motivation here is the income that they make.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moshiri. I don't know whether we have any other person who want to respond. Shari?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk.
Marina, yeah.
Hazelnuts are native to Bhutan, and they actually produce really nice big hazelnuts, which is obviously very attractive for everyone involved. We're going to be sequestering 500,000 tons of carbon dioxide over the 35-year period. So there's a very clear climate impact from that perspective. In addition, this is highly degraded land in the mountains. So it's really at risk of soil erosion and landslides. So a key aspect of what this does is to stabilize the soil through terracing systems, which allows intercropping with other native trees, both for biodiversity, but also for agroforestry, for community needs.
Thank you. Marina, you want to respond?
So thank you. We use more than 170 different species with a few that are cash crops, like cocoa that are actually native, huasu, and Jussara, as I told you, the palm tree. But the systems, they have, we consider 3 different strata, and we respect the successional stages of each of the plants. But overall, we have a panel of species that go up to 170 options. And of course, this will vary with seeds availability at the time, preference of the farmers, and the adaptability with of course, with the other species that they want to plant.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those questions and response. Indeed, we have come to the end of our Dragon's Den sessions. Thank you so much to our project developers for all the preparations that we made. Thank you so much for your time pitching to us here. I know it's not always easy, but we want to say thank you. And to our amazing judges, both physically and also virtually, we want to say thank you so much for your time as well, providing grateful insights and feedback to these projects. And I know this is not the end. You'll continue to engage with these businesses. And to everyone who have joined us, both physically here at the Craft Center and also virtually, we want to say thank you a lot. May you engage with these projects, get to know them better, and if you do have any opportunity, certainly feel free to connect them to those opportunities. We have come to the end. Please do enjoy the rest of your day until next time. Thank you. Let's give ourselves a hand of a clap.
Working on a nature-based project is hard. It is difficult enough without having to search for and apply to funding through complicated bureaucratic procedures. Understanding what funders and investors want takes a lot of time. There are many different projects and many different types of funders, all with specific needs. This diversity is great, but often the two sides struggle to match. It's like going on blind dates to find your perfect partner. Let's make this process simpler and more transparent. If you're working on a restoration or conservation project, apply to the 2023 Call for Projects. You will connect with funders, get your own beautiful interactive map, and be featured during in-person events. Follow the link below for all the information, and see you on explorer.land.
Right. Thank you very much, Samuel, for moderating this session, and also our panelists and speakers. It's great to see so much incredible work being done on the ground, and are there many opportunities to invest in our planet. Yeah, so before you all go, I have a few housekeeping things to mention. Tea and coffee are available at all times at the coffee and tea stations are located throughout the venue. Lunch will be served at all the food stations starting at 1. At the very end of the day, we'll have a special celebration for the GLF as 10th anniversary, which will be co-hosted with Flair. This will take place at 7:45 p.m. and we'll have food, drinks, and live music for you. So please stay with us until then. Those who stayed yesterday had quite some fun, so don't miss today. There is free Wi-Fi available at this venue. The network is called A New Vision for Earth, and the password is GLF Nairobi. That is GLF in all caps, and then Nairobi with a capital N with no space in between. We have members of the GLF team available to assist you